You're supposed to see
John, do you have
how much
Dusty online?
negative.
Okay, I was gonna say, so he's the same judge.
Like the,
He
like
said
for
Hawaii
the,
trip.
it was.
Had a good time?
To zero.
I did until I had to come home,
Because
and then it was a
about
nightmare.
the 2024 projected.
I like, not just a little nightmare, a whole
You
lot
don't
of
have, you're
nightmare.
not supposed to use carryover. You don't need to.
coming back
Like, you're supposed to find things to spend it on
No,
because
Curtis
that's
came
what
back
gets
in China,
invested.
fine.
So it goes into an investment fund and then it grows from there. So when you do need it, there's more.
You know what, it
You're
probably
just
was
using it every
come to
year.
think about
Pulling
it.
it from the year before because you had leftover. You know what I mean? An investment purpose? Like if you have like
Yeah,
a
but
big. I think it stays in carryover. Like that just shows on the GL as a revenue line.
Because somebody has a road.
All right, 6 o'clock.
It doesn't actually make it, like it doesn't leave there.
Very true.
Yeah, but I'm just saying if you're looking for things
Political
to spend it on,
influences
just
and
to
that.
spend it, you're better off leaving it when there's a bigger, when there's a big, I'm not saying you, when there's a bigger thing, a project or something.
Do you wanna borrow
then you
mine?
have
Do you wanna borrow
bigger
mine?
because
I have
it's-
2 pair. That's what old ladies do, we have 2 pairs.
Well, that's why I told him earlier, I said, I'm old enough to need them, I'm not old enough to put them everywhere.
No, I just started this year.
Because I didn't, I'm new with it.
I literally have 2 pairs. These are 1.0s, these are 1.25.
And there's a pair on her head. She has the
So
most,
these are my distance ones.
she has the most classes of anybody I know. And I love
When
it.
I truly go down the geek, I'll just get the.
The string, I love it.
Well, you guys know that this is all being broadcast. Yeah, the mics are hot. You said it's 6 o'clock. and we
Are they still walking
All
around?
right, let me call this meeting to order then. Apologies.
Yeah, they shouldn't be doing that.
All right, I want to thank everyone for being here with us this afternoon, or this evening, actually, at the May 20th. Look at me, this is, when you rush, this is what happens. At the August 20th meeting for the budget for Oshtemo Township. And at this time, I welcome you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just take a breath, turn off my gadgets. And so, first up, we will have public comment. Is there anyone present wishing to make public comment? I see no one in the gallery. Do we have anyone online? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Moving on to, get the agenda in front of you. I forget which one I put first.
You're kind of jumping around.
Thanks. I have a cord value too. Oh, thank you. Take a deep breath. So at this time, I'm gonna amend the agenda since I did it haphazardly. We've called this meeting to order. We've said the Pledge of Allegiance. We also have the opportunity to do remote location identification for remote attendance when permitted by statute. Trustee Cole is unable to be with us. However, we have Trustee Treasurer Clerk Farmer on the line. Clerk Farmer, are you with us?
Dusty Farmer, Clerk, Parma Township Medical.
Thank you. And so the clerk is, by statute, is permitted to participate in this meeting. Next, we have item number 4, which is the mission, vision, and core values. And I invite a member of this body to share.
Integrity. We do not obfuscate. We say what we mean and do what we say.
Thank you. That's going to be, it's a great value, actually.
It is a good one. I remember that one
Yep.
getting added very vividly. That's a Dusty one. I recall that from my
Wow.
day at the community center.
And it's going
It's
to,
funny, I thought it was yours.
I think we were pretty excited about it together.
I'm wondering if we should change obfuscate to a different word, but I like it as a word, but, anyway, it does, lend itself for this evening's conversation. Next, we have agenda item number 6, which is public official updates. Seeing no one present before me, do we have anyone online wishing to make comment? Thank you, John. So I will close item number 6 and move to consent agenda. I would wish to make an amendment to the consent agenda and pull item B, receipts and disbursements.
I was not able to find item A.
The minutes?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, since this was a budget meeting, I did not prepare my items like I would for a regular meeting. I had intended for both to be on, next week's regular board meeting that wasn't specifically budget. Sorry about that.
Oh, thank you. I was aware of item B, I was not aware of item A. So I would like to, at this time, make a motion that the consent agenda be stricken from the agenda.
You want a motion?
Make-
Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
Make a
making that.
motion, you're making the motion?
I made the motion.
Support.
Okay, a motion by Bell, support by Treasurer Bushka. Any discussion, or no, it's consent agenda. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Dusty, did you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries, 6 with 1 absent. And like true to form today, my pen just exploded on my desk. Okay, this is all going great. I don't mean to make light of the agenda this evening. Actually, we have 2 major things before us. And so I apologize to this body and the public for the less than graceful introduction. However, I would like to move to item number 8, which is the presentation, and then after the presentation, a discussion regarding the USDA Neighborhood Sanitary Sewer Expansion Project. And I'd like to invite our Public Works Director, Anna Horner, to lead us through that presentation, please.
Sure. Am I sharing to Zoom, John?
No, you don't.
Fancy.
Can we confirm that Dusty can see it, please, remotely?
I can.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. One of my favorite topics, and thankfully I get to talk about it a few times, our USDA Neighborhood Sanitary Sewer Expansion Projects. This is an update as of August 20th, 2024. I am here with our Public Works Project Manager, Zach Pearson. He has helped put a lot of this information together, and he's probably the one you would get on the phone if you called the Public Works Department with questions about sewer. So we are in this together. So tonight's presentation, thank you. We just briefly, the status of the litigation is that it's all been resolved, and we are beyond any deadlines for future filings. So we are comfortable moving forward with closing on the bonds. So the next steps include closing items. There's a few examples here. There's about 43 items that the USDA has a checklist for that we have to execute in order to go to schedule closing. We have probably 38 of those done, and the last remaining items just need to be updated with the current dates or a new copy of our insurance. We need the road commission to reissue our permit, things like that. So very close on all those items, but most of those outstanding items require us to finalize our funding. So that is going to be the major focus of today's presentation. After they confirm that we have all those closing items complete, we will bid the project again. This was a recommendation actually by USDA. As it's been over a year since we bid phase one originally. Obviously, that's an entirely different market. Contractor schedules could be completely different. So I do think it's in the best interest of the public and the residents of Oshtemo to get updated bids and make all the contractors in the area that might be interested in the project able to bid on that again. With that, we would come to this board for an award, and then we could sign bonds. So that's our goal, is to move through those steps. We do have a rough schedule we can go through at the end of the presentation, and then I do want to highlight the communications efforts we have lined up internally so that we are prepared to help the residents understand what's going to be coming. So I thought it was appropriate to start, this project has been years in the making, decades in the making almost, but it really is about public health, safety, and welfare. There's numerous places in our master plan documents that have talked about this project, again, since 2011, when we did our last major update. You even see it again when we did our housing update in 2023, that we are going to need these utilities available to allow more housing types. And we really want to make sure that we're prepared for future development, we're protecting the environment, and then providing a long-term solution for existing neighborhoods. So those were pulled right from our master plan documents. It falls into every one of our core values, in my opinion: public service, sustainability, innovation, professionalism, integrity, and fiscal stewardship. And then overall, it's just an industry best practice. To have a standalone utility fund is the ultimate goal. So have the revenues come in and be able to continue to maintain and build sewer. It would then allow for the system to be prepared for growth, and the revenue and the cash flow that it generates from the use and the connections provide a healthy and resilient system, again, for some of the maintenance of our existing system, as well as to build additional sewer. So a little bit more detailed on those next steps. Again, I gave some examples of the closing items of that checklist that we need, but two in particular are going to lead to the conversation tonight about confirming the funding. Our bond counsel, so we have a Benzinski & Co., they're our municipal finance advisor, and we have a bond counsel, a lawyer who specializes in these types of bonds and public bonding, that both have to sign off on this project. And Benzinski, the municipal finance advisor, they will run all the cash flows to show exactly what the revenues we have proposed for this project will be able to pay off the bonds for the next 40 years. They also look at not just the bonds that we're proposing, but our entire sewer fund health and balance. So they look at our operating expenditures for a year, they'll look at our recent audits, and they will look at our CIP as well, so that they can make that decision and recommendation. So again, that is all going to lead to us confirming the funding tonight. So since it's been a few years, we have updated these estimates over time. We do try to be conscious of, how often we go through every pay item and update those numbers for what the current market is projecting, just because that does take a lot of time. So these are based on the estimates that were done last year before we went to bidding. And then we did add in some contingency as well as some inflation, and this would be the total cost of these neighborhoods that were the original USDA Phase 1 and Phase 2 neighborhoods in today's dollars. So you can see at the bottom it's just shy of $55 million, and we have $30 million of USDA projects.
Do you want to wait till the end for comments?
I would prefer to do that.
Okay, that's fine.
So looking at those projects and trying to prioritize on how we can use those USDA funds, we have essentially narrowed down phase 1 and phase 2, and then recommended a few of the neighborhoods for what we're calling deferment, and then those are prioritized as well. The prioritization really came from looking at number of connections, which is, you know, prioritizing getting septics out of the ground and environmental protection. The road condition, you know, in a straightforward sense, it's the PASER rating, but really it's about being very strategic with our funding and the timing and the impacts we have to residents. So a asphalt road, we estimate can have 35 years of useful life and maybe up to 50 with the right treatments over time. So we really don't want to make a big investment fixing a road when we know that it also needs other utilities underneath it. So we're trying to coordinate and be very comprehensive when we're doing projects so that we don't do anything short-sighted. And then the average septic age, so these were projected in our, well, they were in our 2011 study that was done by the township, but we put them in today's years. And I guess one thing I wanted to highlight, because for some of them, particularly Beach, where it says that the average septic age is 32 years. I wanted to highlight that 65% of the built-out lots on Beach Street are on their second septic system, and 8 of them are on their third system. So that number is really reflective of those newer systems. Similarly for Sky Ridge and Driftwood, they're on the higher end. It's kind of where I was targeting, looking at why would, you know, a neighborhood be closer to 32 and why would one be closer to 46. In the Sky Ridge Driftwood neighborhood, 61% of the built lots are on their second system and 17% are on their third system. And then on top of that, that's the average age of all the systems. So I just do want to highlight that for everybody, that we often get asked about, you know, what is the life of a septic, and I think that these numbers have that caveat to them, that they're not even the first systems. So this is a long time coming. So in the end, we are at about $40 million in projects, but still hitting quite a bit of the connections that were originally proposed. Without going into all of the detail about why some of the projects were deferred, there's really a lot of work being done, you know, every day in the Public Works Department, where we believe that these projects would have other opportunities to be coordinated with a project, or they were, you know, planned in anticipation of growth or a certain type of land use around them. So again, we really prioritize the number of connections, the road condition, and the age of the systems. So obviously there's still a gap, but with the reduced scope of those neighborhoods shown as the adjusted phase 1 and phase 2, that $40.2 million, if we use the $30 million of approved USDA bonds, there is still a $10 million gap. And a project that was in the CIP but not included in the USDA projects was 8th Street. And again, we apply a lot of different engineering principles to why we would prioritize a project, but this one is getting to a point, it was turned over by the county a few years ago. They have money allocated for this project. The condition is worsening, and it is getting a lot more traffic with some of the development that's been happening in the area. And then it's surrounded by industrial uses and then potential large-scale residential lots. So that estimate is $3 million. The design has actually been started for that project. It was just delayed as we worked through the USDA projects. So we are recommending one of the short-term solutions be additional bonds in the amount of $15 million to close the gap for the USDA projects and complete 8th Street. Another solution is to reset or adjust the road millage contribution to the projects proportionally. So again, when we originally proposed the road millage and we had the estimates for the USDA neighborhoods in 2020, roughly a third of the entire construction cost is related to road work. So that was how we factored the $350,000 contribution from the road fund annually towards the USDA repayment, again, looking at that life cycle of a road of 35 years. So when the costs increase, now those dollars only cover 20% of the road-related costs. So we are recommending increasing the annual contribution to $450,000 for the USDA projects, and could potentially go up to $500,000. That being said, the road fund still brings in enough revenue to cover all of our maintenance for the other roads in the township and continue out their mix of fixes and the asset management that the road commission has advised us on to make sure that they are all getting the same amount of money in the end. A little bit of what we're using the road fund now for is to complete some of the master plan projects and support other road initiatives. So those opportunities would be decreased. And then the third is an immediate general fund investment. So last year, there was a $1.3 million loan made from the general fund to the sewer fund to complete 7th Street and West Main. And this would be to reclassify that as a payment and not have the sewer fund pay back the general fund. You can do that. You can have the general fund contribute towards sewer. You cannot have sewer contribute towards the general fund. So the general fund can participate in a project like sewer or water. And then also look at a 2024 and or 2025 contribution up and above the $1.3 million from the general fund to the sewer fund. And I say that being familiar with the audit that was presented to the board and the fund balances, and again, the priorities that this board has repeatedly mentioned to complete these projects. So just with those short-term strategies, the important part is that we would make significant progress towards the overall goal. So 51% of the construction projects that are in the master plan, and that was actually from out to 2050. So we have a sewer CIP, but this is the sewer master plan that looks very long range. And it would complete 74% of the total connections from those projects. So again, prioritizing the current residents who need a long-term solution and the environment and our groundwater by reducing the number of septics in the area. So then some of the long-term funding strategy for those deferred projects and then into the future would be looking at additional bonds and loans. Again, we would need to have these, have our external professionals like the municipal bond advisors assure that we can do that. Those really, at this time, we have to kind of evaluate every year when we do our annual budgeting. Things can change, and so we look at multitude of different tools to make those decisions on when it would be appropriate to maybe bundle a few projects together and go after an outside bond or loan. A long-term general fund investment in sewer expansion, so increasing the annual commitment to the sewer fund, again, based on the community priorities we've seen through our planning process as well as from this board. And again, some of those variables that we just can't project out long-term but would need to be evaluating on a routine and annual basis is the new sewer service agreement with the Regional Commission in the city of Kalamazoo. grant potential. There's a lot of funding still available from the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed, as well as other project coordination and timing. So as another project comes in, can we partner with that project to get as many projects in our master plan as completed as possible? So then moving on a little bit from the funding, our schedule is that for phase one, since we are pretty ready to go on that one, we would be looking to bid that in October, award it in November of this year, and close on the bonds in December. It would be only a portion of the bonds that we would close on at that time, and that is the ideal timing from the industry perspective of when to bid a project. So contractors are looking to fill up their schedules for next year. They will have a very good idea of pricing for next year. And I say all that because for phase two, we can pursue the additional bonds. We will need to show that we have that funding for USDA to release the rest of those bonds to cover that gap. And we can work on finalizing our design permits and easements. But then when you get into spring of 2025, it's not the best time to bid a project. So we will have to get feedback from contractors as well as other consultants to see what their recommendation would be. We can set it up a few different ways in our contract to make sure that we just, talk about substantial completion dates, that we want certain neighborhoods done by certain times or all at once. But then make sure that the completion date gives them enough time to actually get the project done with any other work that's already scheduled. So we will have to evaluate the best strategy for that, for phase two.
I'm sorry, just to make sure I'm reading right, you're gonna do those phase one and phase two activities in parallel?
Yeah,
Okay.
concurrently. And then the other piece I want to highlight is that, shout out to Kyle Gibson, we have a new media and communications manager who is already created a sewer strategic plan document, and he's already trying to understand the sewer history, some of the pieces and components of it, so that he can help share this information with the community. So that plan talks about definitely a big social media effort. Him and I have already discussed and got quotes for doing dedicated newsletters, whether that's an insert in some of our quarterly newsletters or specific ones related to public works and sewer. We've talked about how to make this an effective website page and then perhaps utilize our GIS tool now so that people can go throughout the community and see what the status of a project is throughout the community, whether they're in one of these neighborhoods or not. And then we've talked about the different target audiences. We will have information to share that is very project specific, but also then making sure we continue that general education to the entire community. And then neighborhood meetings would be, in my opinion, the most appropriate when we have a contractor on board and residents could ask very specific questions about driveway impacts, timing, noise. We've heard a lot of those concerns over time. So we want to make sure that we have the right people in the room to answer those questions. And so those are some of the big areas of media and communications we're gonna focus on. And again, the Public Works Department is always available. So with that, I'm happy to take all the questions and comments and go back to any slides, but really today I'm really wanted to educate the public on the update and where we stand. We've been getting a lot of calls. We get calls still probably weekly of failing septic systems and people looking for a solution. And so we want to be able to provide everybody, in construction, we use the word anticipated a lot, and we do our best to stick to these schedules, but with the weather delays, with materials sometimes being kind of obscure manufacturers and whatnot, and then coordinating with a lot of the other construction in the area. I know we had that presentation by MDOT. We're going to do our best to make sure that we are getting as much information out as we can, but we do, as we head into budgeting, want the board support for the short and long-term strategy we've proposed. The road fund you will see reflects that increase in the annual transfer. The general fund, obviously the board needs to work through the budgeting process a little bit more to make their recommendation on that amount.
Thank you, Anna. A lot of work has gone into this, not only just for this presentation, but frankly, for boards previous to us and supervisors previous to me and treasurers previous to Claire and not Dusty, Dusty's been around for the whole thing. And so there's a lot in front of us, and this is a first conversation, but in order for the township and particularly Public Works to move forward, we need some feedback from the board. And so to facilitate what I hope would be an opportunity for everybody to get their questions out on the table and answered, I'd like to actually start with this in a roundtable fashion, so that we're not just popcorning at Anna. And so I'll start. Does anybody want to begin by posing their questions to the Public Works Director?
Can we go back to the proposed short-term funding strategy, guys?
That means Zach's going first.
Let's go to the exact slide I was gonna ask.
I'm just a smidge confused, so. All the stuff in orange are options, and the next slide seemed to condense this. So I guess the question to me was, are these all individual little levers that we could consider? Are they mutually exclusive in any way?
It is in columns, so it's 3 different solutions. I am recommending all of them.
Okay.
That's not to be said they don't all have to be done, but then you pull one and things change.
That's fine, I guess that's what I was trying to make sure,
Yeah.
because, can you go to the next slide real quick?
This means that all 3 of those are done.
Got it, that's what I was trying to make sure I understood, is which of the orange text, I guess, was a part of.
Yeah, it's all of it.
Got it. Good, because that's what I was gonna suggest too, so.
Okay.
I'm in favor of that reclassification of the $1.3 million loan from the general fund to the sewer fund as a payment. I think that's just the necessary cost of doing business in this environment right now. Everything else on here looks really good to me. I think that the game's the same, the goals are the same, the costs have increased, and so we have to manage that. And it doesn't diminish the importance of the project in any way, shape, or form, so I think what we have in front of us is really worthwhile. That's my comments and questions.
Thanks, Zach.
Yep.
I do have a clarifying question though, and you definitely stated the $1.3 million, but there's actually 2 components of that, which would be possible additional contribution.
And I did not comment on that, because I wasn't ready to yet.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure.
Yep, I'm ready. When we get a little closer, I don't have enough clarity on the
That's
ask
fine.
there to speak to it.
Totally fine. I just want to make sure that you weren't trying to.
Nope, I wasn't being excised on purpose, just don't have anything to say about it yet.
Okay, very good. Please do.
Can you go back a slide? Is there funds added, so center column, is there funds being added to the road fund to come up with those percentages?
No, this is within the current budget. Again, it's just by increasing the contribution to the USDA projects, or I'm calling it USDA projects, it's not just those loans, it would be any loans we have. It limits our ability to do other projects like some of the road connections we've talked about, the Seco Drive extension, so that's where it's pulling from.
I'm gonna rephrase that, because what you said totally just makes sense to me. You're 26%, you've got it 450, and it's only 364. Based on your road revenue, so are you pulling revenue from somewhere else to make that?
That 26% is of the total cost of the projects at the end. So we're getting $30 million in bonds from USDA, we have $40 million to pay back with interest. So that 26% is looking at the total cost at the end, which is And that's where that 450, if you times it by 35 years, that's where I'm getting 20% of the total cost of these projects that we're showing here for phase 1 and phase 2 plus 8th Street.
Okay, so you're not using the annual, you're using the 40 years and condensing it into what the equivalent would be annually? Okay.
Do we really need to break that road millage proportionality out? Can't we just talk about paying for roads with the road fund? It doesn't really matter.
I think it's a good check and balance. I mean, it's essentially, you are required to use those dedicated funds for their dedicated purpose. So, that's why we would like to stay within that amount, that 33%. We don't want to start, because when you do a sewer project, like 7th Street, I'll use an example, a big portion of that was a lift station. And so we have to look at those things to make sure that we're spending the appropriate costs for the appropriate items.
Yeah, I guess I just don't want us to be in a position where the cost of the road is more than 33% of the total cost of a project, and we then shortchange it, right? And all from general or sewer to cover roads. That's all.
Can't imagine where that would be.
So it's almost, Zach, like 50%, because the 33% of the actual millage is 462,000. Where Anna up there has 30% at 500,000.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So it's more than like the percentage of, if that makes sense.
Those are not percents of the road fund. Those are percents of the sewer projects.
The percentage of the sewer project we expect to be road-related costs,
Correct,
right?
correct. It has nothing to do with how
One
much is
third,
in the road fund.
1/3 of sewer is roads.
Yep,
Yes.
yep.
So on this slide, why did you recommend the 450,000 versus the 500,000? Just curious. The numbers add up better, or we don't really know what the final numbers will be?
Yeah,
500 is an even number.
Had to show a smaller number in some way.
honestly, it's because I think still these other projects are really important to get done, and we need some of the road revenue to just go to operations as well, so I didn't want to be shortchanging that work either, so this felt appropriate. That's just the recommendation. I mean,
On the next slide, you want to follow up?
No,
on that?
just to
Okay.
clarify, your road revenue is 1.4 million annually.
Okay.
So like, if we wanted to preserve some of that aspirational purchasing power, for lack of a better way of describing it, we could pull on the first column's lever a little bit and borrow more, right? And there's no restriction on the borrowed money repaving the roads. I guess, I don't know if I'm speaking to a concern you had or not, but I'm thinking out loud.
No, it was more of a curiosity
Okay,
than a concern, I guess. And the next slide, though, did you get what you wanted to say?
Yeah.
Okay, could you go to the next slide? I'm trying to understand, so when you say 51% of construction projects in the master plan, I don't know how to phrase this, is that atypical of what you had planned, or are we farther ahead or farther behind, or is it right where we're supposed to be? I mean, the 51 and the 74%, where did we expect to be at this time, and versus if we do this project, or if we spend less, or not, it takes too long, or whatever? I don't know if that makes sense.
yeah, it does make sense.
I guess it's kind of thinking in the future, so even if we do all this, we're only 51% of where we should have been at 100% or something. I mean, I'm just trying to.
Yeah, essentially, I mean, without having exact percentages like I do on this screen, all the USDA projects were anticipated originally to be done by 2020. And so with all those connections, it would have been a totally different ability to complete the other projects, especially with, again, some of this infrastructure funding. So it's hard to say, how that would have actually shook out. There are still neighborhoods. There's kind of this area right now from 2025 to 2030 that those projects that we're planning on doing are going to be pushed out pretty significantly. And then there's projects in 2040 that we might still be able to hit, but that's a big gray in the middle that I can't, that we don't have a magic 8 ball to know that for sure. But I think the important part of this and what the numbers are showing is that we're prioritizing existing neighborhoods. So a lot of the other 49% of projects that are in the, I won't say a lot, but a portion of the projects that are in the master plan are anticipated future development as well. So by doing the construction of those, I'll use Parkview and 11th Street as an example, if everybody's familiar with the big farm field at that corner. We want to be prepared that they can connect to public sewer, so we're not installing a whole bunch of septic tanks again, and the lot sizes have to be bigger. And so there's those types of projects that don't have a direct correlation to number of connections that I think is the big remaining part of construction. But I don't have off the top of my head how many we would have had done otherwise or whatnot. I don't know
Yeah,
if
that's,
you
I
can
just
take a stab at it,
was
but
trying to interpret whether that was suggesting that, we're still only 51% of where we had hoped to be, or something like, was there something else, a different interpretation of that, so I understand. Did you must have looked at different ways of that average septic age thing where you're like, okay, it's 30, 40 years, but some people it's only 7 or 2 or whatever, and obviously that's not a realistic, because in computing an average, did you look at other ways of showing that to get information?
so that data really came from the county's record of when new septics have been put in. You have to pull a permit from the county, so, and then they were also then able to provide what iteration of a septic they were on. And so that's really where that age came from. They, in the 2011 study that was done, they looked at it in a few different statistical ways, I'll say. So they didn't only look at the average, they looked at the mode and the median as well. So for right now at this high level, we're really just focused on the average age in the neighborhood.
Is there,
And the thing to add to that is that, again, why I tried to explain some of those, percentages of how many people are on their second and third systems. The other thing that this doesn't tell you is the type of system. So the report also says, I wrote this down, that 51% of systems in these neighborhoods don't meet the current standards. So they're not big enough, or they are dry wells instead of drain fields. So beyond the age, there's other risk factors that they have. So there's multiple ways to evaluate the concern.
yeah, and that was gonna be my follow-up, because I haven't been on as long as Dusty has been involved with this whole project. I'm more coming to this within the last year or so. If there's other ways of explaining that, yeah, you're on your second one or whatever, and so you don't really reset the button, to get so many years, or is there a way of some of these people, yeah, you're in your second and that's it, you're out of luck, I mean, is there some other way to convey that to people? And maybe you've already done this, or it come up in communications and stuff, because, I can just see, sitting there going, well, yeah, I've got one, it's, I can do another one, so I'm not, that's thrilled about it, I don't wanna spend the money, or I don't think it's a good project, but, for those people who are, well, I'm on my second one and I got no options, kind of thing, to share that kind of information for everybody, and maybe you have in the past, like I said, I'm coming to this late. If there's a way to share that, it just, you don't automatically get, 2 mulligans or something like that, in the system, and then you're done. I don't know, just, it's my thoughts. And to follow up on what Zach had said earlier, I totally support what you said, Zach, about going forward and interpreting it. I'm behind this, totally. You phrased it a little bit better than I'm babbling on here, but I agree with you.
saying.
Totally. Yeah, I totally support that. We need to move forward.
Michael?
I don't have a lot of comments. The thing I can just say is that it's unfortunate that we had to defer so many people. This is a health and safety issue. And unfortunately, because of the situation, we're not addressing that concern for those people. Otherwise, I think that we need to do everything we can to get this done as quickly as possible. I don't really have any questions at this point because, again, it's health and safety. It needs to be done now. So I agree with all the options that you put up there. and just regret that we have no other funding sources to cover the rest.
Yet.
Clerk Farmer has her hand raised.
I had a question about the road millage. Anna, you mentioned that there were some things that, you know, if we reset these dollars, there were some things that we would not be able to pay for, you know, during that time period. And I had a question specifically about meeting the match for PAR funds with the road commission. Do you anticipate that being affected?
Not currently, so in the budget in 2025, we have the same amount that has been being contributed towards the PAR projects, which is above our match. It's been $500,000 for as many years as I have been here, so that is not proposing to change. I think that when you look at the initial investment in any kind of infrastructure, it's very high, and then over time you try to share those costs, you spread those costs. So they're, you know, depending on how these roads, that we're gonna be doing 17 miles of new roads, and I expect our average Paisley rating, which is currently, I think, around a 5, to be at, you know, an 8, community-wide pretty quickly, or make a significant jump like that. And so, you know, working with the road commission annually to understand when is the appropriate time to do the right fix, will ultimately determine how much money goes towards PAR. I don't want to be just putting projects together in order to meet that amount in our budget if it's not the right time or the right fix. So I'm gonna rely heavily on them to be continuously monitoring the condition of the road, the different types of treatments that are available, to help us present those projects annually to the board.
Thank you. That was the only question I had.
Claire?
No, so I'm on board with, you know, Zach and Neil, and it sounds like everybody else, but being the treasurer, my concern is just those numbers from Benzinski making all make sense when we've got the, you know, $15 million loan and the $30 million loan that everything can pay everything back. That's all my concern is.
And this is an initial conversation.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
we will,
They'll come.
They will come.
They will come, I get it. If we build it, they will come.
Or if we bury it.
When our road is here.
and Dusty, if you're not prepared to answer at this moment, I'm totally appreciate, I just, do you have any feedback about the proposed short-term funding strategy that's put before us? Anything you like, don't like, have questions about, not ready to weigh in?
Oh, no, I can weigh in. I don't like that we have to reorganize the way we're gonna pay for this, because of years of wasting money on litigation. Especially the litigation from folks who aren't even in the sewer district. However, since we have to do it, I am certainly open to all ways of funding this because the sewer needs to go in the ground. And it goes back to everything that was said tonight, but especially those folks who have no other options for their septic systems. Because we don't want to be in the business of condemning properties, entire properties and homes, because if you don't have a place to put your sewage, you can't live there. And that has always been our priority and it remains a priority. So yeah, I'm open to all of those levels of funding. And there was a little bit of a question about, you know, especially more public education with regard to sewer. And I do want to remind the board that for the USDA projects or projects that we're specifically talking about tonight, it is such a small portion of the population in Oshtemo. And I say that to say that we don't have to have big, massive public education, but we do need to have that targeted education, like Anna said. And some of those questions where, people aren't in the same situation as their neighbor, those are gonna have to be addressed on one-on-one situations. Because we're talking about fewer than 1,000 people here. And, that's gonna be difficult, but the message itself, I don't think has changed throughout this entire time period, not since we first started having these discussions and, heavily in like 2016, 2017. And the reasons behind it are still the same. They're still happening. They're getting worse. But I do appreciate that focus down now to the people who are going to be directly affected, because I think that sometimes that gets very confusing in the public when we mass produce communication for 24,000 people that only affects fewer than 1,000. I don't really have anything else to add.
Thanks, Dusty. Just taking a note. So I have a few notes on my paper. Okay. Ms. Horner. And I'm gonna just go through your presentation with my questions or comments. On the first page, after the cover page, with regard to bidding, you used the word, it was recommended by the USDA. I would say that it's a requirement by the USDA to rebid this project. So that's an important consideration, that we can't just move forward with the work that's already been done once. Anna's office is gonna have to do that work again and rebid it. So, although there'll be a good foundation to go for, it's not a recommendation by the USDA, it's actually gonna be a requirement to close those bonds. I wanna go to the page where you, let's see, it's probably page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we should have put page numbers on this. The USDA Neighborhood 2025 estimates, where you put the total cost. I wanna just put out here for the public on the record that those same projects in 2016, 2020 originally was last, that $54 million cost $30 million not that long ago. And that is a shame that we are in this position, because those projects would have already been done, they would have already been generating revenue, and we would have been moving on through the master plan to complete the next set of projects. I want to just say, as the supervisor of this township, that even though the cost of litigation, time and talent of the professionals internally and externally to keep this going, it is worth spending the extra money. It is unfortunate, but it is worth it. And I thank you, Anna, for staying on top of it and keeping this moving forward, even during days where it probably felt not very, like, I'm going through this same action again, and when am I gonna get to be able to see this come to fruition? And I'm happy to support that work for you, and we're gonna make it happen, okay? The next, I wanna go to the page behind that, which is the prioritized connections, road condition, and septic age. Thank you, Neil, for your very good question about how average septic age is presented on this. And the reality is, and Anna answered that well, but the reality is that even people that have a second septic system, a third may not be possible because they simply don't have the lot size. So they're gonna be bumping up against, I put in a second one, and if I have to do a third, then, but the truth is the configuration of their lot, their land size is gonna determine their capacity to do that. So there's many factors that go into whether or not it's time to convert from a septic system to public sanitary sewer. I have a question on the Paiser rate. No, it's more, well, it's a question, it's a little bit more a question for the board. I want to make sure that when we're evaluating the roads that are going to be impacted with regard to the now renewed Phase 1 and Phase 2, that we understand what Paiser rating is, right? Like why that matters. Okay. Going from a 5 to an 8 is significant, and that will determine in the future how much funds we need to set aside to do our par match, I think. If our roads, many of our roads are going to an 8, our funding needed to match par based on what the road commission says could very well change. I also on this same page want to draw attention to the fact that even with the approved 30 million, or the remaining approved $30 million in bonds, and the reconfigured Phase 1 and Phase 2, that the total of these projects, which originally was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 projects that were $30 million, we've had to reconfigure to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 projects that are $40 million. So I just want to call that out because the question, I mean, moving forward, how, do we want to move forward as a body to do this work is something that, that we are discussing tonight, but also how to close that gap between 30 million and 40 million. And so we are, unfortunately, we just lost such a huge opportunity at such a lower cost in the past. It's really, really terrible. Going on to the next page, and there need not be a decision this evening. This is really Anna's presentation, taking board questions and feedback. I've heard very definitively thus so far that the board desires to move expanding sanitary sewer. It supports what's presented before us from Public Works as the next steps moving forward. I think the one question for me is that I think we have not, and we don't have to have an answer tonight, but it will come back, is additional general fund contributions to sewer. And so I just want to make sure we're giving Anna enough feedback that she feels confident moving forward, but the 2024 and or 2025 contribution of general fund to sewer to prime the pump, so to speak, which I think is kind of a sewer reference.
I got that. I'm very proud of that.
And that will come back to us in a very more specific way with numbers that will include our financial experts to sort of help us wade through what is and is not possible financially. And then we'll move to a conclusion past that. On the next page, Anna, I just want to make sure I understand goal 1, or the first point of the strategy. Goal 2, 74% of the total connections from projects in the master plan completed. I thought, or I was thinking that 74% represented originally in Phase 1 and Phase 2, we'd have 898 connections, and the reconfiguration results in 768 connections. Is that the 74%?
It is not.
Okay, yeah, would you clarify that for me?
Yep, so again, we had a sewer master plan, born out of the township's master plan, that projected, projects through 2045.
Okay.
And it prioritized them across those years in a very similar, manner that I proposed which projects to keep in phase 1 and phase 2. So it timed the year of when the road was initially built, the lot size, the age of the septics at that point, to kind of strategize on how we were gonna be able to cover all these projects. Some of them in the master plan were also looking at future development based on land use and zoning. And so what was proposed within that 30-year master plan of sewer projects, we are now 10 years in and have only completed, 10% of it versus we were planning on completing more like, 50 or 60% of it. I don't have that exact number, but, so getting these projects done as I've proposed as phase 1 and phase 2, the connections, again, are higher because we're prioritizing the residential areas to add sewer. And then there will be a lot more construction costs in the future. It won't result in immediate connections. They're not adjacent to development that exists, but it's connections that will come that we can't even predict the number of how many connections there will be, because it really depends on what our zoning says, what housing types we allow, who builds them, et cetera.
Okay,
So,
yeah, thanks for clarifying that. So, I mean, actually, even just doing the reprioritized projects to get us to 74% of our connections in a 30-year master plan, when we're 10 years in and have been hamstrung, would be a significant achievement. And it would, I mean, I would suspect that phase 1 and phase 2, bid, construct. I mean, we could be looking at what, a 2 to 4 year completion? So at year 15 in the master plan, to have 74% of the total connections and still have 15 years to get us to our goal, of course we will change the goal, right? Of course we will change the goal. But I think that's a win. That's a huge win.
that's why I put this celebratory cloud statement.
That is-
I learned from Dusty's AGV presentation about how to make PowerPoints.
Celebratory glow. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm admittedly, glass half full kind of person. So there is positive, and it is about, just focusing on the goal.
I will say, whenever I bring my grumpy still skin kind of attitude to a question that Anna has, she's like, well, if we're looking at the positive. Thank you, it's very good. Next page. Could you speak a little bit more about the infrastructure bill that we referred to with regard to grant potential? And I want the board and the public to understand that even though we are moving forward to make a commitment to make this happen, that doesn't mean we're going to drop the work to look for other funding to fund this. So if you would speak a little bit more about where Public Works might look for funding in the future.
So there's been, in the past few years, a lot of emphasis from the federal government about understanding your current assets and doing asset management plans so that you have a good plan in order to maintain what you currently have. And if you can do that, then they recognize that you can take on more. So that's usually one of the check boxes to get any kind of funding. And the township did receive a grant to complete that study in 2017 related to our sanitary sewer. So they are looking that you're taking these, very, some of the keywords that they use are resiliency. So they want to make sure a community is resilient to not only handle what they currently have and maintain it, but then grow for this development so that it doesn't, keep running into the same issues. So that is something we're doing well that would help us get grant funding. That's really specific to the grants that I know about water and sewer. Also, what came out of the bipartisan infrastructure funding is a big focus on, again, seeing these comprehensive projects. So it's recognized that we don't want to be doing something short-sighted. If we're going in to do one project for $30 million and we can do so much more for $10 million instead of having two separate projects that are each $30 million, they support that, recognize that, you get points for that. So some of these funding sources wouldn't necessarily strike you as they're not going after sewer funding, like that's usually talked about the Clean Water Fund is something, you usually hear about. These are projects that just recognize the community investment even in creating a complete street. And at the point that you have the entire street ripped up and you're putting in new infrastructure that's gonna be safer and healthier, that is received really well to be prioritized for funding. There's a lot of communities doing it right now related to replacing lead services and water main that's been impacted by either the source point or the system and components of the system. So there is a lot of strategies you can take to get this funding, but you have to be constantly looking at the priorities and being kind of upfront with some of your plans. So one of the requirements we laid out in our master plan RFP and proposal is that we wanted our master plan to make sure that it hit a few criteria that would make us eligible for certain funding sources. So that was, again, very strategic. It's gonna take a few years to get that done and then have that box checked, but we're gonna be eligible for a few more funding sources because of that master plan update. So that investment, the return on that investment could be significant. And so that's some of the grants that I'm targeting right now are really leveraging our master plan update and looking at how we can, I'm going to use the DDA as an example, but there's a lot of opportunity there. While we're talking about safer streets, there's a lot of funding for safer streets right now. And while we go in to do the street work, we can do the sewer work or any other. I've met with consumers, like Consumers Energy is trying to get on board with this because, again, same investment for them as a private entity. If we can do it all at once, it's less headaches for the users, but then we can coordinate and everybody spends less money, which regardless of public or private goes into rates. So we're just trying to be good stewards of the funds across the board for the community. So those are some of the grants available right now that we're really trying to be prepared for.
Thanks for speaking to that in a deeper format. So I think that there is a misconception that if we were working harder as a township, we could just run out there and get some grants and get this paid for. And that's not the case. We have to be, in order for funding sources like large federal grants or large state grants, you need to be ready to not only do the projects, but manage that internally, that funding, so that you're meeting the requirements that they have as well for how you're spending that money. And there is a lot of internal work going on right now between Public Works and Planning to set Oshtemo up to be in a very strong position to be competitive for those larger grants. So in the reconfiguration of the unfortunate situation we find ourselves in, that 5 neighborhoods had to be cut out because they were no longer able to be funded. But moving forward, the township very well may be in a competitive place to begin to move some of those projects using other funding sources in addition to grants or in addition to federal loans or bonding. So, and I know I'm belaboring the point, but it makes me, MAD, mad that we have to set aside 5 neighborhoods that could have fully been completed at this point. And it costs more money and we have to rethink it, but I applaud the professionals in the township again, knowing the planning, public works, all of the professionals in the township who have been thinking, all right, we're not gonna be able to do all we wanted to do. How do we make ourselves in the best position moving forward to continue to do that work? So that is just a testament to the strength of the people that we have working for the township. So again, I applaud you on that. And I know I'm just going on, but I'm gonna get through my comments here. I'm so sorry. Sorry, not sorry. One last thing on this on this long-term funding strategy, that is a necessity to keep us not only on track to do the projects that we've outlined, but also being agile to be able to intake projects that weren't necessarily, and we'll use Chime Street as an example of that. It's the most current that's sort of in the laps right now of the township working through is you never know when there's going to be a development that's coming down the pipeline that you hadn't anticipated, that's an opportunity for you to connect more people to sewer or build a better road or whatever. And so part of the need for this this funding strategy is to keep the township agile. So when things like Chime Street, which wasn't on our initial phase 1 and phase 2, we have the funding necessary so that we can help make that partnership and those connections happen. So it is, those unknowns actually do come up. Like, there are things that, they're good opportunities that a good development comes before you and you're like, hey, we can connect 15 more houses or improve their road. So being agile, not only planning, but having agility as a township is really important as well.
Yeah, I think that Chime Street is a good example of that, as well as Parkview. I mean, I think when the road commission did those roundabouts, again, we would be talking about potentially in 10 years trying to redo those, and it would have, I mean, sewer typically goes in the middle of the road. It would have just been so heartbreaking to me as an engineer to see that, but we had people connecting within months. We had a child care facility that had their septic failed and needed to connect to that sewer. So again, when we get back to that health and safety piece of it, having that infrastructure in place, it really does prove to be serving its purpose and be beneficial that we did that project. So, and that was the board, you know, we had to just make a decision kind of on the dime. The road commission got grant funding to do the safety project, and so we had to step up to the plate.
That's, yeah. And we have to be able to be in a financial situation in our sewer fund to do that stuff. So, the proposed schedule, I did have one clarifier for the board and anyone that is watching, the public, that the township is not gonna just receive a check for $30 million. It does not work that way. So would you talk a little bit about the funding stream with the USDA loans? And then, we're not gonna bid, or my question really is, are you going to bid phase 1 and phase 2 in October? Or do you anticipate a different bidding schedule? Granted, they could be running concurrently, but would you talk a little bit more about that?
So the USDA, when we go to close bonds, typically projects I've been a part of in the past with them, there is a initial request for funds because communities are trying to get paid back from all the design work that they did. And we have some of our professional team members that have not been paid yet, and they typically do that because they know a community is waiting for these funds. So in our situation, it would be that we would do a small disbursement or request of funds so that it's on USDA's books. They usually like to see it around $1,000 of increments of 1,000. And then as the contractor begins working, they submit pay requests that go to our consulting engineer to get reviewed and verified that the field inspector agrees with those quantities that were submitted and that that has been installed, it met the specifications, and they would recommend to us that we approve that payment, and we would take that to the USDA in exchange. So we would submit it to USDA, they would give us the funds, and we could pay the contractor. So, and then only the amount of that request is what starts accruing interest. So that's one of the important parts about not trying to get it all up front, is because we don't pay interest on it until we disperse it. So it is a little bit of a process to get that funding to the contractor, but these contractors all are familiar with this type of funding. It's it would just depend. There could be a really large, in March when they start construction and they're mobilizing to a site, there could be a big disbursement, and then while they're starting to order some of their materials and get everything laid out, there might be a smaller disbursement. But I would suspect, at least for phase one, the way it's proposed, it will take 9 months before all of that money is dispersed, because we'll hold retainage that won't get done until the end. So it will not be all released at once. I think that answers that first question. And then the second part of that is, so phase one is permitted, designed, it's been conditionally awarded before, so it is ready to go. I do hope that in the month of September we can meet with our professionals and talk about some of the things we've learned on the 7th Street and West Main project, so we make sure that we have all of our bases covered and we have done every part of the due diligence we can, or we somehow cover that in the contract documents. So we are going to do some of that work, and again, I think that based on the timing, that's very good for a contractor, because they're towards the end of their season this year. They're looking for work for next year. They can start to assign some of their crews. The way we have it structured is that each neighborhood has a set number of completion of days once it commences, so that they can't, go to 5 neighborhoods and pulverize the road and then start putting sewer in one and not get back to another one for months. Or they can't even pull off a job really for a week and not, to go. I mean, if there's an emergency, I think that would be a different case, when we have a tornado come through or something, there's all hands on deck. But that's really meant to keep a contractor on site and working. And we would give them probably the whole 2025 construction year to get those neighborhoods done. That's very reasonable to me. Usually you'd make completion in about October, just to give yourself some cushion, because asphalt plants close in the middle of November, and then we always add a second season of restoration, turf establishment, to make sure that the contract's still open through the next year, and that there's no erosion issues, and that all the grass seed is taken. And if we need to do a second application, we can. It's just kind of a very volatile thing for the weather, so we do that to save ourselves. So I suspect all of phase one could be done next year, and again, some touch-up work in early 2026. Phase two is a little more challenging. So again, when we get through the final design and permits and easements, which we're well underway with all of those things, there is a 90-day period that USDA has to review all the information. So they have an engineer that will sign off on it that covers our region, as well as they have the Office of General Counsel that has to sign off on it, and that's a 90-day period. So that really puts us at February or March, and that is not the best time to bid a project this large. Phase two is some very big neighborhoods, and so it's not going to be a few weeks of construction. So, and then there's a lot of factors we consider in engineering and construction industry, like there's a lot of construction going on in Kalamazoo. Even just haul routes and looking at where the gravel pits are and what might be in the middle. So like West Main is gonna be completely torn up in 2025, and one of the neighborhoods in phase 2 is Country Club Village. And so we have a truck ordinance even, so like we're trying to, overlap all these considerations to time this well, which ultimately leads to the best pricing. So, at this point, I would like to say we could get at least, part of phase 2 done in 2025, but, then you can imagine for a contractor, it's really hard to bid a project in March of 2025 if you're not actually gonna be able to do it until 2026. So there's some ways we can work with the contractors, like we can procure materials earlier if we have a place to store them. There's a lot of big, probably everybody saw outside of the library and the township hall, the manholes that got delivered. So that's one way to secure that pricing. And then, we usually labor costs go up the next year. So we're gonna have to be, really thoughtful when we go to phase 2 and how we do that. We can't break it up much more than we have because of how the system connects and where the sewage ultimately flows. So, it's not like we could, make a smaller project that they could get completed in 2025 and bid that as a standalone project. So we will be working with, even reaching out to the contractors we know to get their experience and their advice on it. They want these jobs. They like having their guys busy close to home. So they usually will provide good feedback and advice. And then we can, USDA and Penzinski, they're involved in projects being bid all across the state. So they get a lot of understanding of how prices are coming in, what other funding sources are available and the timing of those bidding. So like, the state revolving funds all bid in May, so we want to try and avoid that. We try to avoid the MDOT bid lettings, so I hope that answers your question.
Oh, it does, and that's, super good information. And I think, like, for the takeaway is, I think as a board, we should expect more details on phase 1 and how that's progressing, and then we'll hear more details on phase 2, probably after the final design easements and all that stuff. So the focus, I imagine, will be on phase 1, getting that up, launched, done, and then phase 2 will be coming in behind that. So the type of information that will be coming to the board for specifics or for requests in the nearer term is going to be really around the phase 1 neighborhoods. Is that fair to say? Okay. We'll keep you in the loop on what's happening with phase 2, but each thing in its own time. Lastly, one thing, and then I want to let Clerk Farmer know, I heard your comments regarding who, targeted information and making sure that we are being the most, making ourselves the most available to those that are going to be impacted by this project most directly, and making sure that's the focus of our communication and not being distracted. I hope I captured that accurately.
You did, thank you.
Okay. So there'll be more on communication, I think, coming forward. My feedback with regard to the strategy, if it's not evident, is that I definitely support what Anna has proposed for a short-term funding strategy, and I look forward to the next conversation about what may or may not be possible with regard to contributions from the general fund. moving forward to assist in this, so I don't think we have enough information right now to make an informed decision. But I think we will move on that, bringing that information to this body sooner rather than later, so that we know, so that Anna knows, what resources she has. So just look for, we're gonna be talking about sewers a lot at board meetings, just so you know. It's gonna be fun.
We have some good pictures. We can.
And bring some pictures, we all love pictures. The kids in here.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna, and everyone on your team and other departments that are helping to support this work. We're gonna do it. Gonna do it.
We told Zach that when he got hired and.
5 years later, okay, 2.5 years later.
Trooper.
We're gonna do it.
Yeah, all right, it is currently 7:24. Our second item is discussion on the very preliminary draft blue line budget that is not stamped draft, unfortunately, so I would like you to take your ink pen and write the word draft across the top. And then let's take a 10-minute break. We will reconvene at 7:35. Thank you.
Good job.
Excellent presentation, Anna.
Yes, yeah. I think
Just so you guys know, the microphones are still on.
We call this meeting back to order. I'm gonna confirm that Clerk Farmer can hear us clearly.
I can.
Thank you for that. So we're going to move to agenda item number 9, which is review and discussion of draft capital DRAFT, very unbalanced budget before you, but I think that it's important for you to know this contains many things that the department heads asked for in their AGVs, and so I encourage them to put those in the budget, and budget cuts are a part of the process. So it's my intention to sort of walk through this from top to bottom. However, in fairness to, and we're gonna do this very high level, like really, really high level. I think let's start with the Public Works budget because we have our Public Works Director Anna Horner here, and we also have our Project Manager Zach here with us. So if we want to go to, Anna, can you remind me?
Yep, so we have 101,441.
101,441, and just as a reminder, and I'm gonna send it out to the board, 101 is general fund. And then the departments that don't have their own dedicated revenue sources come out of the 101. And I'm gonna close that by just saying that the sewer budget is not in the budget yet because until Anna had good direction from the board, doing that work didn't make sense. Now that we have some direction, the sewer budget will be added for us to view in later sessions moving forward. So we're in appropriations. Is everybody on, oh, shucky darn, I didn't ask her to put page numbers. Department 441 Public Works, everybody there? So I'm gonna, and this holds true for all of the departments. The salary numbers are in there. We have not talked about compensation, either internally or externally with the board about where we wish to go with regard to any compensation increases for the staff. So we, at my request, Sarah, the HR director, we picked a number and we put some numbers in there just so that they were there for you to review. But those are not, the salary lines are not concrete yet. Okay, is that clear? So that holds true for every department. So if moving down, Anna, I'll just go ahead. This is your jam.
Yeah, so we put all of our non-motorized related costs in the general fund. So those are and we break our salaries into non-motorized and then the other respective funds. Each position has its own percent of its salary that goes to those different funds depending on the focus of the role. So that's for 441 salaries. The salary line, I will say, does not include, it includes the township engineer, the GIS specialist, the project manager, and the director. So we had a part-time technical specialist in the previous department head, and that is not included in the budget in 2025. And then we do use a lot of blue lines, and the way it's kind of formatted right now is that it looks like some of our lines, like under 101,441, 82,000 engineering fees, it did not get, there's like 2 general civil engineering. It's probably because there's also a column 2024 projected of how much we think will be projected for the end of the year. So the software must have carried it over for the 2025 into another line or row.
Yes.
So just, there's no difference between the types of general civil engineering that would be done. We have the same budget for that work, as well as GIS services, and those are using Ryan and Newhoff for the most part for both of those, just miscellaneous support items. The Go Green non-motorized facility concept plans, I'll use examples just because it's usually easier for me, is that that's like when a road commission gets a grant for a safety project and we want to make sure that the non-motorized gets designed, we have money budgeted to be reactive and agile.
Can we ask questions as you go, or do you want us to
Sure,
wait?
yeah.
I don't, before you get too much further, under the consultant line, the first blue line was the Public Works record digitization. Can you speak to that a little bit? I'm trying to understand, because we've had ongoing record digitization to like get all old records digitized, and then obviously the idea would be new processes in place to be digital going. So I just want to understand, is that, what is the nature of this?
Yeah, so that was a big effort while we had the ARPA funds, because it was kind of a funding source we wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to get a jump start on that. Now that it's internal, we've kind of, with Carrie, the assistant to the clerk, that's part of her role, and so we really haven't needed to use external forces to do that, and she's really picking up, so we don't have any additional money budgeted for that moving forward. We're hoping to do it all in-house.
But the work that's being done is digitizing old records? Okay. New work that's in flight, you guys are already digital then? We don't have to?
Yeah, it's digital. We've been working on like file naming structures and things
Okay.
like that, so that it's then, we can find it better and.
Yeah, but we're not, the way we're operating today doesn't create new work tomorrow for digitization,
No.
is it? Okay, that's what I wanted to get at, is that
And-
hopefully I won't have to see these digitization line items.
What you might see is somebody to work with us to develop the nomenclature, whatever, so that it's uniform across
Sure.
the township. So right now, in the cloud or,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, wherever it's stored up
I
there.
get it, like an information retrieval system.
Yeah,
kind of
so
thing, that's fine.
that could be something that I think we could very well need outside talent for.
Careful with that pen, man, like Clark Griswold in Vegas Vacation.
Smudging all over.
Anyway, that could be something where I really think we might need to bring in an outside person to help us develop that
Okay.
universal. If Jim wants to receive a zoning package from 1989, what does he need to put in the search bar to find it?
Sure, that's
So
fine.
that,
I can actually speak to this.
Oh.
If you'd like.
I would love that, Clerk Farmer, this is your wheelhouse.
Don't say metadata.
Thank you. So, part of my statutory duty is to be in charge of our records. And a portion of that now has become the digitization of records. So one clarification, we did use some of that budget for digitization to purchase equipment for Carrie to use. So that was one way in which we spent that money, although I don't think that was your specific question. As far as needing outside resources to be able to establish conventions for record folder, or, folder conventions and naming conventions, I do not anticipate needing outside assistance for that, but I'd certainly be open to the discussion because that would go through my office. But some of that's really going to be more important to have happen at each department level, because I think the one thing that we have learned over the last few years is that there is no one size fits all. We can have a basic structure, but really what we have to be able to do is meet the needs of each department so that we can access records in perpetuity. And some of that work has already happened for records that are already archived in our Laserfiche repository. And some of that continues to be ongoing because also how we save it long-term is not necessarily going to match with how we save it short-term. And so it's really important that we use our professionals within their departments to let us know their needs. And then we can create templates for every department, we can create templates for every type of record, and then as Carrie goes into the work of long-term storage, she can just utilize those and we will have them set up ahead of time. And we have been working with departments to do that. Public Works is definitely one of the more challenging, I will say that, which was why it was appropriate to put some money aside specifically for that digitization. But that was also at a time when we didn't know whether or not we were gonna have record specialists, which we do now. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions about that if needed.
I think that's really great, Dusty, and I cannot underscore how many bank boxes of records have been emptied out of this building that are now digitized. It is phenomenal. There's more to do, but a lot.
Since 2020, literal hundreds, because I think we brought hundreds of just attorney's records from, what was that company, Jim? Iron Mountain?
Iron Mountain, yeah, 148 boxes.
Yeah, and then we've just had everything on top of that, and at some point we're gonna start cleaning out the basement.
So, yeah, good. No, it's good conversation. And huge progress has been made. And so it's really good, exciting. Every time I see a stack of empty bank boxes, I'm like, woohoo! What can I fill it with? Okay, go ahead, Anna.
So I think a lot of the other stuff is pretty standard. There's some things that we're consolidating just within the overall general fund and not breaking it out by department. So that's like mileage will just come out of the general fund, not specifically Public Works. Capital outlay, again, it's just repeating the lines, but we have been every year for the last 2 years, allocating $250,000 towards maintenance of our existing system. And the way we identified those, the major streets just mean that it's on probably, M43 West Main, and then the local streets are residential sidewalks. So we are getting those projects from the asset management plan that was done last year. On the next page, the non-motorized Drake Road. I gotta remember what all of the segments of Drake are. So this one has railroad coordination, so I'm gonna say it's the piece from KL to Stadium. We plan on building that in 2025. So the budget's reflective of that. We will be asking for more grant funds, so hopefully those numbers only come down if they change. The next segment is NMDRHA, which I think is H Avenue. Okay. So this is installing the path on the south side of H Avenue from Drake, where the new roundabout is, and towards Westport Village, the condominium association. It's not all the way to their driveway because they are required to install their frontage as one of their conditions of approval. So again, kind of coordinating with that project. All local funds, so there is only road commission permit fees and expenses, not overhead in that one. The next one is the non-motorized facility for KL Ave. This is getting us into phase 2. We're currently doing some of the work we can, but really we have to make sure we have a point to tie into when the bridge is complete, so not getting constructed until 2026.
The bridge is 2026, right?
Completion.
Okay. Do we have to wait for bridge completion before we can install that path?
We could be on like the tail end of it, but it has to be open,
Okay,
essentially when we're done and want our piece to be open.
okay.
So again, it's repeating some of these phases, but we're using OCBA as the prime consultant. Whiteman is doing the more detailed design. We have a right-of-way agent involved because it is an MDOT project and that is required. And we do have, it is federal funds, so we are having to get clearances from like the, SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office. So they look at archaeological impacts, they look at tribal determinations. So we go through, they look at endangered and threatened and endangered species. So that's that one. Vienna, so NMPRKV is non-motorized park view, so that was the piece we tried to do in coordination with the two roundabouts on Parkview at 11th and 12th. But we did have to go through the condemnation process for those easements. And so we are currently under design for 11th Street to Drake. And it has taken a little bit longer than we originally planned, so our goal is to at least get the pedestrian fence on the bridge that crosses 131, and then we probably won't have time to pave this year, so we would pave first thing next year. But a lot of that was designed and installed with the roundabout projects, but we did bring a professional on board just to confirm those grades were built per plan, and then we will have to pave it.
Still, and we're still working on finalizing some of that easement stuff on that
We
project.
actually have secured the easements. We have one outstanding case as far as
Okay.
what fair market value is for the easement.
Okay. But we anticipate that will probably conclude in 2024.
Correct.
So the project's not gonna get done in 2024, it'll probably get completed in 2025.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And then NMS 9th is 9th Street, Stadium to Quail Run on the west side of 9th Street. We have a TAP grant for that. That project has been delayed for easement acquisition and road commission permitting. We are trying to design a storm system or make sure the current storm system accommodates the additional runoff from the sidewalk being installed, and that has been quite challenging. So there isn't an increase in construction costs you'll see, even though the TAP grant amount hasn't changed because it's a year later. And now that we're in final design, we have more detailed numbers, so that is planned to be built next year. We also have construction engineering would be somebody to be the inspector on the project, do all the material testing, all the pay applications, things like that. And then on the next page, you'll see the RCKC cost recovery is what they're now calling the overhead. We estimated that at the current rate. We haven't seen the new rate, but that is when federal funds go through the road commission as our Act 51 agency. They have that on there as well, and then we did put in some contingency. We won't approve the contract with contingency, it's just for our budgeting purposes. And if, any of that would get spent, we have a purchasing policy that describes how the different dollar amounts that we would come to the board with. And then the last one is the White Gate non-motorized connector. Again, project we were trying to get built this year. I was maybe naive that I thought it was pretty straightforward. It's up 11th Street, a little jog on West Michigan, and up White Gate, where we're not putting sewer in that neighborhood, so it wasn't gonna be impacted in that project. And again, we're trying to design storm sewer for that sidewalk. So it has taken a lot longer to get through the permitting process. And again, that is local funds, so there's not the overhead cost. We're just estimating some permit fees and expenses from recent projects. And there's one more, Drake and non-motorized. Oh, there's no budgeted, I'm sorry, the next page has Drake and H non-motorized. There's nothing in the 2025 budget because that got completed this year.
Yay!
It's wonderful.
Love a good completed project.
So So that's the lengthier, I think, of the public works budgets. The next one will be starting with 204 000. So the has carryover, current real property tax, and interest earned. So this is the road, dedicated road millage. It's projected to bring in 1.4 million next year. We have some interest we're accruing. And just a reminder to the board, this now includes the streetlights. That was a change we made in 2024. So then the appropriations are on the next page. I'm gonna have to check the salaries. I'm surprised it went down, but maybe Sarah's trying to tell me something.
She might have changed the way she calculated a percentage or something. Who
Yeah.
knows? So we have.
I won't take offense to that.
It'd be a rude way to find out something.
Sorry, missed that meeting.
We did increase tools and supplies. I mean, it's not maybe significant in the overall budget, but significantly from past years. We have found that we do need to have some more tools for the fields. For example, we tried to find a sewer lead recently, and the road, the structure cover in the road had been paved over, and it would have been very helpful to have a metal detector and some other equipment. So we are gonna be investing in some of that next year. And I think we stole all of the maintenance department's spray paint, so we probably owe them some paint. So again, this is a lot of blue lines, but it's pretty redundant. We've moved over mostly all of our projects. They're just some ongoing ways we're trying to be proactive in our transportation system. So that's the Act 51 lobbyist, the Urban Road Advocacy Group, Master Plan Opportunities and Access Management, and then there's some specific projects about the Atlantic and Parkview project is related to the parcel the DDA bought. And then the Drake Road corridor analysis is really about Drake Road from West Main south with some of the development coming in. Trying to do some preliminary analysis, so that road currently is already over capacity. So we need to be very careful adding more traffic to it. Streetlight operation, and then capital outlay. We've been using the capital outlay to either do LED conversions or add additional streetlights as requested by neighborhoods for safety, is usually the concern we hear. And then we've been working with the capital improvement committee as well to talk about, when those should be completed. Is it just any request? Is there a way to prioritize requests? Things like that. And then the capital outlay roads, so the $500,000 is our contribution. What you can't see is that it says plus an estimated 270 from the road commission for PAR dollars, but that doesn't go through our books, so we don't include it. But essentially, we would be spending $750,000 on preventative maintenance. The Second Street project will be done this year.
Yeah, is there an update on that?
Yeah, I just sent one out to the residents. The road commission, we talked to them, the completion date is the end of September. So they've asked, the paving contractor, Lakeland, was waiting on a sub to get the culverts delivered and installed, so. They said they would move it to the front of the paving list for us. Mostly because I wanna make sure we get the quantity so we can get those on the tax bills. And then there's the few other master plan projects, the Bluffton and RuPaul connection, and we called it road connection easement acquisition. It's really, you know, again, as we've learned through the Seco Drive, the first thing you gotta do is get the easement for the road before you can build it, so. it's anticipating some of that, and again, wouldn't be able to be spent until we came to the board.
And we're primed for a lot of that right now because of the amount of development. I mean, we have a real opportunity, thanks to Public Works and Planning and others, legal, to make what has been like dreams, connections in the township come true because of the amount of investment that's coming in. So again, that ability to be agile is important.
Yeah, and then you'll see, we went with the 500,000 with the transfer to sewer, even though I said 450, but, so. Still balances at the end.
A
but
girl can dream,
maybe for the first
okay.
year.
Small numbers, Deborah.
Yeah,
That's right, if you never ask.
and then we did put in our carryover amounts to make it balance at the end, so we might be overachievers in that sense, but.
Wouldn't expect anything less.
So not much that I could see changing there unless the board has a priority of, you know, as we go through the master planning process and talk more about the regulating plan and other road projects. And then the other one that we have is the water, so that's gonna be 486. Get through all the fire lines. It's not even listening to me.
Way at the end, 486.
We might have a little bit stupid in there. So the big thing I wanna highlight in the water fund is that, we are going to reduce the surcharge again to 0. So that is great for the residents' water bills. I think it was at 6% when I started, we went down to 4, we're at 2.5, and we're gonna go to 0. So, that is because we have confidence that with our current fund balance, we will be able to maintain our operations. And then the city, through the new water service agreement, is handling all the connections and construction. We do still have some money, we're getting significant interest on investments. And I do still want to talk about creating a utility financial policy, if you will, around the water fund and how that fund balance gets spent in the future. And there's a few things still getting worked out through the water contract and how it's implemented that will make that more clear to the board about, you know, if there's a project that's neighborhood initiated, it's not for an environmental reason, it's just because people might not like the color of their water or the hardness of their water or something. You know, how that would, those costs would come back to the residents. And then again, looking at how we sustain with our current fund balance, our operations for the next so many years. And then have a little bit of reserves in the case that something goes wrong. So, that, I think actually what we put in there, didn't we, Zach? I don't know if I see it in there, but, we had money budgeted for that work, that utility financial policy. However, we reduced it significantly because I believe I can do a lot of that work in-house now that we have the township engineer. So I really didn't have the capacity to do it before, and I was gonna use an external consultant. But now that we have the staff to help do some of the development reviews that I'm doing, I think we can do that work in-house. Did I get it right? All right. I'll now tell you, after I went through all that, Zach did 90% of this work.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you for good delegation,
Yeah,
Hannah.
he's
That is
keeping up with
excellent.
all the numbers and all the
That's what you
invoices.
needed that for.
Get your accolades.
And
Pushed you
then,
to the limit, didn't I?
and obviously what's next is the sewer projects. So those will come in. Well, like I said, I anticipate we will talk about sewer a little bit every board meeting through the approval of the budget.
Yeah, sewer's 485, it might actually have been printed for whatever numbers.
It was, there's some stuff in there,
Yeah.
but
I guess BSNA this year, I don't know, maybe Dusty can correct me, but I think it tried to maybe it was just for the, projected for 2024, but it tried to fill in some numbers.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Can confirm it's been a pain.
Yeah. So I don't know that a lot of these are accurate, but 485 is the sewer and water. Well, it's sewer, I don't, it says water, we use it as the
But
sewer fund.
it's not ready for,
Review, yep.
yeah, it's not ready for review. You guys will tackle that, and this will not be the first time this body will talk about this budget. This is just the first time you're seeing it, which, by the way, is 2 months ahead of last year. Just want to note that.
I'm happy about that.
I
I was stressing last year, like, come on, hurry up.
We made it happen.
With the county?
It was funky, but we made it
Plus, I
happen.
need to get with Anna on 485 as we're working through it to put in the revenues and estimate interest and all that other stuff, because I have no idea what the expectation is of what's coming in.
All right,
Hopefully Josh is there when we.
we'll get him there. We'll get Josh, the accountant. We'll bring him in later as we dig in deeper, kind of make some priority decisions, and then get closer to adoption, which I believe is usually the first meeting of November, so adoption tentatively, if things go according to schedule, will be November 12th,
Yeah, because the county needs to
The
know what our
public hea-
millages are the end of October.
end of October.
And our budget will go out to the public for 30 days, so beginning of October.
Correct.
You kind of do have to like set your date and work backwards.
That's exactly how it works. All right, thanks, Anna. We have Fire Chief McComb here with us, so Greg, thanks for sitting through. I just wanted to let the board know too, because this was a first go-around with the budget, really just going top to bottom, that, I mean, Anna sort of has to be here. But Chief is here of his own accord, so I want to give you the opportunity to please walk us through your budget lines, anything you want to highlight, haul out, and your first fund is what, 206, right?
206, so, the 206 fund, and let me load just the 206 fund data.
Kenji, are you picking up the fire chief?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want to sit up here?
I can move my stuff, you can sit over here.
All right, I'll go up.
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually people. Probably better.
Yeah. I can free up a chair.
So 2025 requested in the 211 fund,
211 or 206?
I'm sorry, 206.
Okay.
I am 9,330 in the green. That could change for the better as we get through the year if we don't, let's see, 206, 340, 93, 200 is the sewer connection fee. And I'm hoping that we can get that paid this year because that is in the budget this year. And I don't want to roll it over to next year. So if I can get that paid this year, that will free
What's
us
that
up.
number again, Chief?
206, 340.
340.
93, 200.
Oh, I didn't go.
I think you said 240 and everybody's like, where's that at?
340 dash 93, 200.
Thank you.
So sewer connection fee of 37,630. If I can get that paid this year, I will take it back out of the 25 requested, so it will be
I think
that
we're
much
gonna
more.
refuse the payment.
Not until the work is completed.
We asked if we could pay, if we could pay it in advance. Why can't it be paid in
Prepay it,
advance?
they're gonna get the service.
I think because it's capitalized, like it goes into as an expenditure.
You have to make the payment in the year that the service or product was received.
Oh, okay,
And that.
got it.
Like God is talking to us.
It's the dusty in the sky, that's what I said earlier.
A little past that, down at the bottom, 340,97009, equipment, went up quite a bit. And that is because, I have $45,000 worth of replacement intakes for our fire trucks in there. The intakes that we have been, we've been having them rebuilt almost annually, and it's time to upgrade them. And when we do upgrade them, we want, typically the way we train, you want everything the same on every piece of equipment. So, those are 4,500 apiece. There's 2 on each fire engine, 1 on each side. So that would cover the cost of all of those. That is the major difference in, everything else is increased slightly from what it's been in the past to keep up with inflation. I did lower 340,70500. That is our on-call fire pay. We're having, we're losing on-call firefighters, and it's very hard to hire them. This last go-around, we had 1 applicant, and it was just not worth the time and effort that we'd put in to hope that they would make it through our process. So, we just hired a bunch of the paid on call is full-time firefighters who are now taking up a lot of that, they took up a lot of hours and a lot of the pay before.
This is the natural evolution of the policies that we put in place. We're transitioning to a permanent full-time
Professional
firefighting
fire,
force,
right.
and
Yeah.
paid on call is going to attrition out.
So, averaging out, we're spending about $4,500 a month right now in paid on call pay. Since we hired those firefighters, I don't see that changing much, so I took that from 275,000 down to 180. 180 is a little on the high side for 4,500 a month, but that gives us a little bit of cushion, so. Are there any questions in the 206 fund?
Remind me, Chief, I don't have my notes with me from our meeting. Staff, is there any staffing request increases in your 2025?
No,
It was promotions only.
promotions, yeah.
Okay, so no more full-time firefighters, but moving, there was 2 promotions, if I remember correctly, right?
It's just a.
4 total, because we have one that's coming down from a promotion, down a level. And
Okay.
then one that will go into that spot, and then 3 promotions.
Okay.
Real quick, sorry if this was mentioned earlier, because I've seen it in some of the other funds too, but we got a whole bunch of stuff that's zeroed out and repeated. Did we already say this?
It's, I don't know why I pulled it.
It's pulling over, I've got the GL open,
Okay,
and I
I
think
just-
Dusty can confirm. I think it's pulling over 2024 and then making new lines for 2025, and I'm sure she can clean that up or
Okay.
print it differently if need
Yeah,
be here.
it's a, shouldn't look this way.
No, it's just you.
Okay.
I mean, I'm looking at it, and I'm not sure why, because I didn't pull this report.
No, and,
I can take a look at it.
That's
Yeah,
fine, just something to clean up for the next one.
Yeah,
Right, I
there-
can work with it and make sure.
yeah, for sure. So, yeah, some lines are duplicated, so, you know.
So the
The
left
ones
is
that have 0 in 2025, I
and then
don't,
those
not
are
interested in.
2025 with the
Yeah,
lines
I
on.
Yeah, I don't know why I
Yeah,
did that.
only to see what 2024 is.
Yes, but
You
I'm pulling.
kinda-
But you can put them all in the.
Yes,
Yeah,
they should
yeah.
be
Yeah.
on the same lines.
Yes, exactly.
But let me just say, the
Yeah, but
program
cost
doesn't do that stuff.
Someone, a
naturally.
human does, I
A
get
human
that.
does that.
No, I get it, I'm sorry, I just wanna make sure I
No,
wasn't
you're
misunderstanding what I was reading, 'cause I was
absolutely,
confused.
that's right.
Well,
And
and I don't see what you're seeing, cause I pulled up my own report.
of course you did, Dusty. Let me send you the one that's harder to read.
Where should I hold it, Dusty?
It's the way it printed.
Can you scan this in part?
Budget related, chief, I see that your insurance costs are the same from 2024. And I think you might wanna build in a 3 to 5% increase on that. For the general insurance for the, vehicles and property.
I think that already has an increase built in this year, and if I remember right, looking at the percentage of where we're at, we were gonna come in under this year,
Okay.
so I left it alone to, I think there's some cushion there.
Which number is the insurance?
Alright, it's 206-340, 91200.
Got it, thank you.
Okay. So this is ops.
All right, so any other questions in the 206 fund?
If you bump your fire pay down to 180 and pension's 10%, once you bump that down to 10% of that.
I didn't hear what you said.
Your fire pay, you knocked down to 180, but you kept your pension allocation the same based on 275,000.
Oh, yep, I will work with Sarah on that.
Yeah,
Yeah, 10%.
Okay, they do.
Okay, that's in lieu of social security.
Gotcha.
Yep, I'll have Sarah look at that, she enters those numbers, I don't think she
Yeah,
knows that
it's-
I bumped that pay down, so.
Okay,
oh, for the, gotcha.
good call.
Anything else? I'm gonna move on to 211. Overall, it looks really good until you start breaking into sections.
Until you start looking at
And my 211 fund starts getting ugly.
Oh, it's kind of not your fault, a little bit.
So, a little bit. Bringing in 420,000 and expenditures of 600. So we do have under 97,600, 344, 97,600 is the vehicle. That is the fire engine and outfitting, 288,000 of that. Is our last 25% payment on the fire engine that we budgeted for this year, but it's not gonna be done this year, so we're gonna have to re-budget for next year.
So the new fire truck is due to be delivered,
They are expecting it to be finished in February,
when was that truck ordered?
quite a while ago.
It's not even new anymore, frankly. It's not. I mean, we're gonna be getting a 2023 truck in 2026 essentially is what's gonna happen.
Well, it'll be a 2020, they haven't even started building it yet, so. But yeah, we had paid for it a long time ago.
So it'll be a 2024 truck in 2026.
It'll be a new 20.
I do have
Greg's
a
fault,
side-by-side in there, off-road rescue with a trailer outfitted for patient care. That price may be a little on the high side, I believe the vehicle's around 32,000. But I'm putting in the extra for outfitting, to carry a patient and a trailer. And it'll obviously have some lights on it too to alert people, so.
I gotta tell you, Chief, I'm still opposed to this one.
600.
Oh, the rest of it.
I don't know that I have been convinced of the mission for the vehicle, the apparatus. And when I'm thinking about some of the issues we're dealing with right now with our engine, it's got me thinking about what are our plans and policies around which vehicles go where and what the mission is of each apparatus. This is just stuff that I've been thinking about as we've been chewing through some of these problems in our strategic committee. So I don't know, for me, I can't be okay with that expenditure right now without a better understanding of its mission and the policies around the missions of our other apparatus that we maintain. So I don't know how that works for us as a group when we're doing this budget stuff, but I'm not gonna support a budget that has that specific line item in it. So I just wanna be very clear about where I'm at on that one. And if I can be convinced otherwise, that's fine, but that needs to happen. And I don't know what that mission looks like, so. I'm
Yes, so-
trying not to fumble I am fumbling my way through this. I'm trying to be
Right.
gentle, but I'm expressing my displeasure with the line item here.
Yep,
Well, and also, if you could explain what changed from last year to this year from the last time it was denied in the budget. Right, because you brought this item before, it was denied in the budget, and so I have to assume something has changed from then to now.
I know you had-
It
Right,
was,
in
it
the
was,
next question.
well, if I recollect, that similar feedback came from the board in preliminary budget discussions, and then it was taken out of the budget before the final budget came for hearing.
Yeah, so I can say that the main reason that I keep putting it in there is when we do these off-road things, which are not that often. Right now, I'm worried about a firefighter hurting themselves because we walk back and carry people out. We have used the township's gator. We were requested by police last week to use the off-road vehicle to try to find somebody. We went, responded with the drone. We also went, I called the maintenance director, Greg Fountain, said, can we use the gator? He said, yep, it's in the garage, so I went back to get it. Other things were in the way, so we got everything moved out. And the trailer had a lock on the tongue and Greg had the key with him. So we waited for another 10 minutes for Greg to get here with the key to unlock the trailer so we could get everything hooked up and loaded.
That's an
So-
interesting story, but what that tells me is that Sheriff Fuller needs to get himself a Can-Am, not necessarily Oshtemo Fire Department. And so I don't mean to be rude, but you're gonna have to sell me, and that's not gonna do it.
Yep.
Because we've got a lot of money going in here into capital, and we got trucks with 146,000 miles on them on our front line, with frames that are rusted through, not even quite, maybe just a little over halfway through its expected lifetime. And the mechanic that works on them tells me he's never seen frontline trucks with this many miles on them. So what are we doing that nobody else is doing that's getting us these results? I don't think that they're satisfactory. And I know that we have a kind of a limited sample size, but I think it's important that we seriously chew on this, because we're buying a truck now. We are already in the process of beginning the emergency acquisition of a used truck probably at this point to get us through for this one that's going out of service. It's important stuff that we, I think, need to talk about. I don't feel comfortable spending money on capital right now in the fire department on depreciating assets in particular.
So leads into my question, is that emergency purchase in this budget somewhere?
No. And
That'll be a budget amendment, probably in 2024, if they can find the vehicle, I would assume.
But if they can't, we absolutely have to have it in 2025.
Then we're gonna have to rent one. We're gonna find some way to spend money to make sure that we're not down a truck so that we can meet the needs, but.
so I did, it's going a little off from where we're at here.
Sorry, I'm not trying to detract from
That's
the.
okay. I did go view one today that's
Okay.
out at the shop. And so far, everything is looking really good on it.
Fantastic.
And I think we're gonna be very pleased with the price.
Okay.
And I'm just pulling all the funds back up here. If we were to approve everything that I have budgeted, I've got 122,985 in the green. That includes the 213 fund that we try not to touch.
Right.
That is way more than enough to buy this other vehicle and get it set up for us.
I understand, and it's
so-
not about making it fit in here. I think we have the revenue to buy all the things that we could possibly want and need. I still don't think that that's the right value for the community at this point, because I'm concerned about the way we're, I guess, treating some of these capital assets that we're acquiring, that they're running their lives short. And so so I'm worried that maybe we're missing policy around how we're handling these vehicles, in that we're not the board's not maybe necessarily as engaged as it needs to be on what these vehicles are for, what they're doing, who's driving them, where they're driving them, when they're driving them, how often, how far. That stuff's really important, and I just learned that the hard way, in person, when I got to stand underneath that rusting engine, okay?
I can,
So it's not about what we can afford in a singular budget year. It's about what's the long-term value to the township, because the folks telling me they're not liking the trucks out on the road that they're paying $2 million for.
Yeah.
I don't wanna see it.
yep, and I can tell you the answer you're not gonna like is to why we are having the problem that we're having. We're a very busy department.
Sure.
But if you look at Kalamazoo Township, Comstock, less run volume than we have, they're running out of 3 stations. So all of their apparatus are taking thirds of the calls.
Sure.
This one has taken the majority of our calls, because of the position that we're located in, and that's just the reality of it. So I think until we get to the point that we're going to build and man a 3rd station, we're going to have to shorten up the lives, or the replacement span of our apparatus.
I'm not sure if I agree with that,
Couldn't you
though.
switch engines
But
between stations?
It's okay, we don't have to debate those specific details. I'm just trying to raise to my colleagues on the board and to you, Chief, that my concerns about some of those things, so that we can have that conversation going forward. Because I still believe we're overrunning these engines, and I need to be proved otherwise at this point. I think we're driving them far more frequently than is necessary. They're running more calls than they need to be running. We should be outsourcing a lot of those miles to Tahoes and Explorers and things like that. Because when you show me your breakdown of your calls, that's where you're going. You're going to traffic accidents and medical emergencies. And I think you guys can be better equipped in a more cost-effective vehicle.
I will,
I think an important piece of this conversation, though, is that what we need as a board is to be able to look at the fire portion of the capital improvement plan that's supposed to map out capital purchases over the next 5 years. That capital improvement plan is required by state law. We're not currently working under an approved plan, but we need to see that as we're looking at these budget requests to make sure that they align. Which requires additional work before we can approve a budget.
yep, and we will have, we are working on that capital plan. So I think, I would hope by the next month or 2, we should be ready with that.
Well, I hope that taking my feedback in stride, consider you a friend. It's just business here that I've got some strong feelings on this one.
But it also has to be a board-approved capital improvement plan, so some of these budget discussions are putting the cart before the horse. We don't have an approved capital improvement plan that we're working under currently. That has to happen well before I think we can approve any budget this year, because that is supposed to be the guide of how we make capital purchases.
She's right about that.
So what's the action takeaway, I think, Dusty, for that then? Like, whose responsibility is delivering that? The fire department has to come back with
No,
them?
with supervisor's office.
Okay,
Well, right, but they have to, the fire department will have to contribute to
Sure,
the overall
okay.
capital
Right.
improvement plan.
okay, so some
And-
collaborative effort internally to come up with something and bring it back to the board, right?
Correct.
Okay,
It might be helpful for at least for me, to have like a work session, section of the meeting to learn more about the fire
Yeah.
department. These
I
are all
totally
the
agree.
trucks we have, this is the condition, this is what they do, what they're supposed to be doing. And then, in this new vehicle that maybe you want, this is how it would fit in there, and that's what its mission would be. Maybe just like a learning process for, especially us newer folks who, maybe, well, at least this newer folk who doesn't know that much about fire trucks and what they do and what they should be, why they were bought. What was the role that they were purchased for, and what is their life, I don't know, just throw it out there as a idea.
Yep, I would welcome that. I do want to move on to 344,98,000. Capital outlay and equipment. The SCBA grant, that we were going for this year, we were not able to, go after the grant because our earpacks were not 2 generations old. They are now. So, the city went out and got their grant. We're going in with Comstock, next year on the grant, if this is approved. And, $500,000 worth of earpacks will cost us $98,000. And then the dual band radios, I'm still on the radio trend, very expensive radios. All radios are expensive nowadays, but, we do have, the tech team members, the technical rescue team. They're alerted and a lot of their traffic is done on 800 megahertz frequency, which is not what our radios transmit on. So, right now, our team members get text messaging, and other ways of communicating until they can get one of the 3 or 4 800 radios that we have to take off one of the trucks and take with them for the
Who's
call.
using the 800 frequency?
The city of Kalamazoo does, but the technical rescue team uses the 800 radio
Okay,
across the state basically.
gotcha, okay.
So I did put that in there. It's, we can operate without it. It would just be, very beneficial to have it. 98-100 has $0 in it, and that is, it had a whole lot more. But what I'm asking, and, you'll see in your packets for the next meeting, we had this $288,000 set aside this year for the final payment and outfitting of the fire engine. Instead of putting that into carryover and then pulling it back into the budget next year and inflating those numbers, I would prefer to take the $288,000, reallocate it or do a budget amendment request, and then buy the equipment and the facilities work that is not listed in here. And it is not, I'm still, I think, $78,000 shy from using I didn't go with the full 288,000, but that would replace the windows at Station 2, the wallpaper at Station 2 with paint, the HVAC system at Station 2, HVAC at Station 1, carpeting at Station 1 and flooring. So a lot of building maintenance, what I've talked to the maintenance director, and he said, yeah, we can definitely try to attack that this year and try to get everything done this budget year. And then some equipment, tech rescue team equipment, and then some other smaller things that were not huge amounts, but.
This is all very, are you good? Are you done with that? Can I
Yeah.
ask a couple questions? Yeah, okay. This was all very good, by the way, thank you. Second thing, this was a thought that I had, as a result of some of these strategic planning meetings that I've been attending. And our discussion around fire station location, the fact that Station 2 is not so conveniently located or usefully, strategically located, that'd probably be the right way to say it. And we've got some conversations about a new fire station someday and whatnot. A topic that came to mind was if that day comes that we build a new station that's more located where the calls are, and now we have this extra space at Station 2. I was trying to think, how do we turn the fire department or help mitigate some of it being a cost center and help you generate some revenue? And one of the thoughts I had, and I wanted to run past you guys, is what would it take to build a training facility on the property at Station 2 that would be regional best in class, that we could begin to host trainings from out of state, instead of us going and paying money to these have them come and pay us and use our facilities. We'll make a capital investment potentially. And I want an idea like that kicked around and chewed on and brought back.
Yep, we can definitely look at that and try to run numbers to see if it'd be financially feasible and
Okay.
worth it. I know we would love to be able to do something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if the numbers are gonna add up to make sense.
Certainly, and I know that there's a desire for some improved training facilities just for our own benefit, and so the idea was, well, what's the next logical extension of that, right? So maybe if we can do both of those things. I thought I had another question for you. Oh, thinking about firefighter safety. One of the things that I saw at one of the tours that we did was a really sweet hose drying setup that one of the places had, where they had these massive like cranes that were control operated on the ground, hang them, sends them up, and they're hanging and drying, no person has to climb a stupid ladder. Where are we at with what we're doing for hose drying? Because I believe in Station 1, it's still just climbing a ladder in an old chimney silo thing, right?
That's where we're at.
Okay. What would it take, how often are we doing that, by the way?
Every fire.
Every fire, okay. So can we take a look at what it might take to get a system like that installed? Like an automation, like an automated lifting?
Yep, I don't, I can look, I don't know if the roof in that room would support something like that.
Okay.
But, I can definitely check on it.
At either and both stations, I'm just trying to think, we're doing well, I think, financially, with the exception of some of these unforeseen things, with the capital assets. But this is an opportunity to help reduce injury risk, and I think it makes a lot of sense, so.
Yep, we would welcome that, because that is not fun.
No. No, and if I'm gonna ask you to walk into the woods to get me when I break my ankle, then I'm certainly willing.
Then he is buying it himself. That's what's gonna happen. We'll put it on the tax
I think you're
bill.
asking him to carry you out, not walk into the woods.
I go, oh, see, you know, if I had one of those things,
Yeah,
I'd take you back,
yeah,
but I gotta go.
Yeah, that's right. Walk back, Greg's got the key to the gator, sorry.
But we found you.
Just wait, talk to me through the drone.
So overall, in the 211 fund, I am 180,000 in the red. And if we take the 45,000 out, I'm still 135,000 in the red. So either we look at carryover funds, or I start cutting more out of here. 79,000 for our personal protective equipment. We are getting a grant for turnout gear. That is only for full-time firefighters, not including me or Eric or Jim, I believe also, so. Paid on call, do not have a second set of gear yet, so that money is focused on that. And then, of course, the fire truck payment and outfitting, at 288,000.
But I wanna be clear that next meeting, you'll be bringing a budget amendment to the board for their consideration about reallocating those funds from that line.
Yep, but those funds are not in this line, so
Right.
it won't change this number.
Well, it could.
I could pull 90,000 out from dual band VHF radios for the tech team members. We're still gonna be
Can you
a little
talk to me
over.
some more about that? Can you help me understand that, the demand for that communication? How often are we finding ourselves in that situation?
Well, I would say a couple times a month.
A couple times a month? Okay. And can you give me like, I don't know what
So.
give me
yeah,
a
there's
hyper, like a scenario that's
there's-
happened.
Something's happened, your pager's gonna go off, or your phone's gonna alert and say, we've got a tech team call.
Okay,
So your next step is communication with the team members,
okay.
which would be done on the 800 radio.
800, and then now you're talking to the tech team in Kalamazoo and whoever else is,
Yep,
okay,
and other counties even.
okay.
So when we went to the grain bin up in,
Okay,
a lot of the radio traffic was figuring out who's bringing what equipment for this type of an incident.
yeah,
Do we have a ladder truck coming? Who's bringing the ladder truck? So all that was done on the 800 megahertz frequencies that we were not part of.
Okay.
Until we got to our radios, and then we found out what everybody's doing and kind of played catch up.
so you do have some 800 megahertz
Yes.
radios, and where are those typically?
In the fire engines.
They're in the engines, okay, all right.
Now, everybody's assigned a personal portable radio,
Mm-hmm.
and those are VHF only. And the ones I'm wanting to get are VHF and 800, so they do both.
Okay. Any resale value on your current ones?
Yes, but we're also short on radios too, so.
Understood. Thank you, that helped me understand considerably more than I did
So I'm gonna ask an odd question. How come that transition didn't occur sooner to 800? Because after 9/11, there was a big push for standardization across regions. I know on the east side of the state, even EMS was using 800 radios.
Yep,
How did we get left behind?
the big issue that we run into when you work with smaller departments and very, very limited budgets is the 800 radios used to have a mic fee. So every time you click the button to talk, it would charge you 25 cents or something. And that was the state of Michigan system. So it was a very expensive setup to not only get the radios, which could have been a grant, but you still have the 20% matching. But the associated fees, the annual cost for the use of the radio. Michigan, it's called MPSCS, Michigan Public Safety Communication System, the big towers that use the 800 system. They charge a fee to keep their towers running. Now, that fee is swallowed up differently now, and I think it's more tax-based, so now the push-to-talk fees are not there anymore.
Yeah, it goes through the fund system. But that's a long time ago. I'm surprised to hear that we're that far behind. I'm really aghast, because we have a very good department, very well-known, very good equipment for the most part. I'm surprised to hear this.
Yeah,
this
we
day and
stayed
age.
with the VHF mainly because most of the county did, and so we need to communicate with them more. Now that
So
the dual band radios
it's a
are.
countywide failure then? I mean,
Yeah, it's much larger than just us.
Not only that, Michael, I think you're gonna benefit from some of these informative meetings, like, we have just now caught up in staffing. The township grew way faster than the fire department, and so money's been more allocated to protective gear, staffing, so that somebody is not personally injured, and catching up that stuff first, which has been essentially more important. So I think you'll find these upcoming meetings like, what? Informative.
And I'm new, so I expect these, but yeah, I'm used to east side. There's very big differences between east side and west side.
Yeah, big differences.
I wanna ask about some of the training, line items. I've been meaning to.
What number
What
are
number?
you?
I'm looking at 206-336-96300, continuing education. So, 206-336-96300. So, luckily, the goofiness here helped me realize what we did in 24 and 25. So, what I see are Michigan Fire Inspectors Fall Conference, Michigan Fire Inspectors Winter Conference, Michigan Fire Chiefs Conference, Fire Marshal NFPA Annual Code Con. And these are on 2024, and now they're on 2025. And I just want to understand what's going on at the fall conference that's different than the winter conference, and why are we attending both every year?
Yep, so it's all continuing ed based, so they gotta get continuing ed credits.
Okay.
To keep their licensures up. So one of the conferences is not enough to get you all the continuing ed credits that you need.
Are there other ways to achieve the continuing ed credits?
Not many for those positions. Other things, medical wise, there's plenty of other opportunities, but the fire investigators, and the inspectors don't have a lot of opportunity other than those to get that.
So Chief and I already talked about this a little bit, and I think he's working on providing the documentation of the requirements for those positions in order to keep their appropriate license.
Okay. I've been
I know.
in professional life for a long time. I know what conferences are like. I know the benefits that they bring, but I also know that they have diminishing returns. They are not something that I would attend annually, most of the time, right? At least in my professional career. Just thinking about the value of what we're returning to the township here, if this is the appropriate.
What's your CME schedule? So like as a physician, we have to get someone in a 3-year block. How many years do you have to get that?
3 years for
3
medical.
years as well?
Yeah. Yep, the others, I can't say if they're annual or 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, but there's there's a line, a limit to that too.
So I know at some point we were discussing policy and number of conferences, and I don't know what the outcome of that was or what the findings were on unlimited numbers per year.
We did talk about it, there isn't a policy, and I think that arose regarding the number of conferences that the fire department goes to, and that's led to the conversation that I had with the chief about asking, what are the purposes of these? And because I think that it does sort of lead to, you know,
We don't wanna prevent certification.
Certainly not opposed to continuing education in any way, shape, or form. I'm simply asking questions to make sure that we're not wasteful, that's all.
Yep.
all right, do you wanna do your final fund?
It's empty.
What do you mean?
It's
empty.
It's flush, it's the best one.
It's empty.
I don't have anything in 213 to come out of it.
I want to talk about 213 for a second, and not prepared at this board meeting, but y'all are gonna hear about it very soon. Brady, where is it? You are estimating what, 1.7 and change in 213 for 2025?
I think 1.5.
1.7, is it, and that's a guesstimate, because we know these are
I don't have those numbers.
not natural, or these are not fully vetted numbers yet. We've not had a chance to.
May I have that extra budget?
Yes, of course. You're welcome. Talk about this publicly, but I think this is a great time to start the conversation. We're gonna have more conversations. Oshtemo was awarded $1 million grant from the state of Michigan in next year's budget to help us rebuild Fire Station 1. We asked for 6 million, which would have gotten us a lot farther, and we received 1 million. We have some parameters and some more information about what we can and cannot do with that funding, but
Is there a drop dead date on that, on those
Yep.
funds?
we need to know by January 1, right?
Yes.
January 1, we need to know, so we either, and I mean, this has been this redoing Fire Station 1 has been, it's been evaluated, there's been studies since 2016. We're not gonna save our way to a new fire station. That's what's happened in the past. We ran, I think at the rate that we have been saving, what did we figure last year? It would take us 40 years to save $10 million.
The money we've been putting aside was just a token of acknowledgement that we needed to do something. Never
So
adequate.
we have an I think we have an opportunity with the money that we anticipate being in our 213 fund, add $1 million from the state of Michigan, utilize some of the funding from maintenance that we've been putting aside for a new maintenance facility, incorporating that into a new building. So I think we have an opportunity, otherwise, and we need to come to an agreement, we do not have enough money on our own to fully fund that station. So similar to Anna's presentation on sewer, we would need to at least have a conversation about how would we fund? Otherwise,
I think, yes, yes. Conversations around how we should fund this. But I also don't know that this board has had a real solid debate about whether or not it wants to construct a Fire Station 1. And whether or not it wants to ask the township if it wants to construct a fire station. I feel like we're getting a little bit ahead of the board right now. on the
then
fire
we're
station.
gonna need to make a decision before December 31st.
Okay.
And, I mean, because we can walk away from the state grant, that's, and try again. But I also feel like this conversation about a new fire station has been around as long as I have. And so I do think it's been debated and evaluated and studied. And I will say that I think that it is my hope that the board, let's just have the conversation. I'd like to be a partner in helping get to the same place with what the fire station wants and what the board wants and the community wants. I think it's been adversarial in the past, and I'd like to I'd like to approach it differently.
What's been adversarial?
I mean, I guess my impression in the past is that the onus was on the fire staff to sort of figure it out on their own.
As far as like their needs of a station?
And how to get it funded and approved and.
No, okay, well, that might be.
That's
That might be,
my-
perception on one side, I guess, from my perspective, going back to 2016, we sat on Buildings and Grounds Committee looking at a combined facility because we had bigger problems with police than anything at that point in time. But we were looking at a combined facility that would kind of replace this Station 1.
Yep.
It was incredibly collaborative. At the end of the day, it kind of fell apart because we just couldn't pull the trigger. I don't think there was enough political will to make that kind of an investment at the time. And so it kind of fell apart, and we never really got serious about it again. So if people feel like they're being left to twist in the wind on this, that's on us as a board, and I apologize, but we need to grab this bull by the horns.
I think we have $1 million opportunity to have a good discussion at least.
Absolutely.
Dusty's got her hand up too.
Go ahead.
Thanks. So I think that it's really important that we have a discussion about a new fire station 1 completely separately from the discussion about a grant. Because that grant process happened really outside of the board's awareness. And so it's important to have the initial discussion first. And you're right, we have talked about building a new fire station. And as I've told the board before, it was never Fire Station 1, it was always Fire Station 2 that was going to be rebuilt in a different location so that it was more useful. And this entire conversation, though, ties back to what I said earlier tonight, which is we can't even have those discussions if we're not working under a capital improvement plan. And that piece of it, the fire department has always sort of kept their own capital improvement plan and contributed to the one that's board approved. Excuse me. But they've done their own research. They had the research that proved they needed to move Station 2 and have a different facility. And that's the piece of the conversation that's changed that I feel like I haven't been a part of as a board member. And I know that there's a fire committee and some work's being done there. But the request that comes to the board, which would keep us all informed, is the request for a 5-year capital improvement plan with an explanation and reasoning behind all of those purchases that tie back to a master plan. And for 2 years, I had requested that the fire department be included in our master planning process, and they aren't. And that will make the capital improvement plan for them challenging, but not impossible. But that's the sort of thing that has to be the basis for our discussion about building a multi-million-dollar facility. It's difficult to start that discussion when we start with, well, we have $1 million that we were just awarded. Let's move backward in the discussion from there. So I want to be able to productively do that before the end of the year, but right now it's very late in the year to do that. I'm still willing to, and I hope we can find time to start the initial discussion about whether or not a facility should even be built.
that is heard, and the fire chief actually sits on the leadership committee for the master plan that we're currently in. And I encouraged him to participate in that specifically, so that the fire department could be a part of those discussions.
And that's good, because I hope then they're able to incorporate that in, because my understanding was that we would have to do an amendment to our contract with Progressive AE if we wanted to add an additional component. I'm glad that he's a part of it, though, absolutely. That was something that I wasn't aware of, and I think it's a good first step. I think we need to find out how much of the fire department information will be included, and if we do need an amendment to that
That's
contract.
right, no, so, a master plan for the fire department is not a part of the contract that we have with Progressive A&E right now. That is correct.
And right, and that's understandable, because that would have come back before the board. But that's the sort of research and community feedback we need to know whether, or to include in that conversation about whether or not we want to build a new facility, where we want to build it, where those recommendations are coming from, and then we can talk about funding it, right? That would be the way I would normally view this process going, which every single step I think is equally important.
Well, we haven't had an opportunity to even discuss this publicly. So, and this is taking the time, introducing this conversation during the review of the 213 fund seems the best time to initiate the conversation. And and with regard to timing, in all honesty, the request was made in late spring, early summer, but you don't even know until the state goes through its budgeting process. And so the awareness of the funding wasn't even confirmed until 30 days ago.
Wait, no, Sherry, I think you misunderstand me. I'm not saying that piece of the conversation isn't important. I was just laying out what, in my opinion, it would take to get back around to the decision about that funding.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So we know there's a deadline of December 31st, and I was really just trying to explain that we have quite a lot of work to do before we can tell them whether or not we're
And
going to.
so the groundwork for the presentation to the board is already something that the chief and I and the deputy chief have been working through. So I think this is just me, and I think in the short, this is me letting the board know that we're gonna be talking about this as well. And there is some groundwork as far as the whys about how the request was made to the state for the funding. It wasn't just pulled out. It is actually based off of the 2016 study that was done that presented 4 different options with regard to working on.
Station 2.
No, it actually discusses Station 1. So.
Oh, the one that was going to be an addition off the, yeah, okay, I know.
Yeah, so, it is based off of some actual work that's already been done. We didn't just make it up entirely, but it also, the timeline.
I don't mean to say that, Sherry. I really just laying out the expectation of some of those pieces that I would expect to see to be able to make a good decision as a board member.
For sure.
And you might choose to present it in a way that doesn't follow that. But so I'm really saying that would be part of the discussion. I would want to know why, when we actually do discuss it.
Yeah, no, that's
like I
totally
said,
fair.
I'm absolutely willing to have this conversation.
Yeah,
but it's going to be complicated.
It will be complicated, but I think that we have an opportunity, and it would be to not take it up and have a conversation about it, would, I think, be a disservice to,
I agree.
Yeah, okay. So now you all know, and then coming forward, we will be talking about the idea of renewing, rebuilding Fire Station 1, how that might look. There's a couple of different options and some ideas. So, I mean, it's really just here's what we're bringing before you, and then the board can certainly ask for more information, for sure, and expect that the fire department would present that. So it seems silly to me to bring forward, with regard to going for a state grant, it might happen and it might not, I mean, that didn't seem like a good way to approach it. Maybe we will do that a little differently in the future, so it doesn't feel like.
Again, Sherry, I think that was an opportunity that was ripe for the taking, and if we had those other things in place beforehand, which included work that would have been done before your time, if we had those in place, it would have made this much easier.
For sure.
I think that's really what I was trying to express.
Yeah, it doesn't really feel like it's set up for a hole in one, but, we might have to birdie this hole or par it or something.
Par is good.
Par's good.
Good score.
Okay.
But
I don't go.
Any other,
it's kind of shocking if you know her.
oh my God.
That's why I don't go.
I played with him once.
Is there anything else for the chief regarding his budget?
It was a good one. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job.
Yep. Right. Quickle smirking.
I feel
going home.
the need to let Zach know that he can go if he wants to.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. No, not that one.
Yeah, nice try.
Well,
Everybody.
we have been at this for 3 hours, and I would like to suggest that we pick this back up, this draft at our August 27th meeting, and we'll just reserve an hour or so to discuss this draft budget moving forward. But if others are ready to perhaps move forward on our agenda and close conversation about the budget right now.
Could we do the next budget discussion during the work session before we start the regular meeting? We haven't done that in a while.
We haven't done that in a while.
Or do we want, or are we just not doing that format at all anymore, which is fine?
It's just a matter of the way that I've laid out the agenda, but we can certainly put.
Or even early. All I'm saying is that sometimes we wait and do these long budget discussions at the end of the meeting, and it's really difficult to get through them and focus, and because it's really heavy.
Maybe do the budget discussion after consent agenda is continued.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
Okay, continue, yeah, that's good.
There's nothing after.
They can wait, Neil.
Well, it is a matter of balancing. I mean, I think probably what we'll do is I'll set a timetable and we'll get as far through it on the 27th as we can, and then we have to move on to the rest of the agenda.
Time box yep, that's fine.
Yeah, so, okay. That being said, I'm gonna move forward to item number 10, public comment. I see no one here in front of me in public comment. John, do we have any hands raised on Zoom?
We do not.
Okay, so I will close public comment and move to board and committee updates. We'll start with trustee Sikora.
Nothing tonight.
Holy moly!
This coat's on.
I already put my coat on, I'm getting it.
I knew when I saw flowers.
It's like, hey.
Okay.
I have nothing. It was a budget meeting, so I'm not
Treasurer Boucher,
prepared.
that's okay.
I'm leaving it.
Trustee Chapman?
Nothing.
I don't have anything tonight either. I've got planning commission on Thursday, so maybe Tuesday I'll have something for you.
Well, I guess I'm gonna share that next week I signed up and I start next Wednesday to be on I'm doing the public.
We're trying to get out of here.
I'm taking the Citizens Police Academy with the County Sheriff's Department. It's 11-week commitment. Every Wednesday for 3 hours to learn more about our Sheriff's Department. And
And the new citizens arrest.
that is ahead of getting ready to talk to the Sheriff's Department. There's a police committee meeting being scheduled
Oh, God,
ahead of
that's
our
right, I gotta reply to
con-
that.
It would be nice if you would, sure. And so, anyway, and
So do you get to park in the garage then?
you know what? Maybe.
She gets to carry a gun.
Oh.
She got,
You know what? I took,
she's gotta get,
I took the
she's gotta
concealed
tase so many
class, I just
citizens
never
to get
got the
her credit.
license.
Gotta get tased.
All right, with that, I will present any other interesting nuggets.
Ask Dusty if she had any.
Oh, Dusty, do you have anything you want to share?
You know, I do, but I'm gonna save them for next week because I am not providing board member comment with those two yahoos on their way out the door.
I'm standing.
This is why it's important to be at the dais, actually.
I have a the election update next week and an update from ZBA.
All right, sounds good. All right, with that, we have exhausted our agenda and this meeting is adjourned. Have a great night, everyone.
That must've been one of the,
Yeah, it must have been me. I looked around, I said, 1, 2, 2.
Bring your budget with you.